So today's video is going to be another solved true crime case. Today is day number 6 of True Crime Week, meaning that tomorrow is the last day. Today's video, I know it's another shorter case, and I know I've been doing a lot of shorter cases all at once, but that is because tomorrow's video I am redoing the Yorkshire Ripper video, and that's going to be about 50 minutes to an hour long. I'm completely redoing that video, re-scripting it, refilming it, everything, so it's going to be completely different. And so that's where a lot of my time has been going, so a lot of the other cases have been shorter. So I'm sorry for all these kind of mini videos all at once. I know a lot of you don't mind, but I also know that a lot of you have not been very happy with it. But I'm not going to sit here and apologise because after all, there is only so many hours in the day. I physically do not have the time to do 30-40 minute videos every single day, and a lot of you understand that, and a lot of you are very respectful. And on that note, I would just like to ask, in the beginning of this video, I know you're always respectful and sensitive in the comment section, but for this video especially, because today we're going to be talking about the murder of Ross Parker, and this involves a lot of themes of race and terrorism, a lot of sensitive subjects. So I just ask in this video particularly, I know I don't have to ask this, but can we just make sure it's very kind of sensitive and respectful in the comment section. But yeah, quickly before I get into this, I just want to give my usual disclaimer that I mean absolutely no disrespect to anyone that I talk about in this video. This is all just information that I have found on the internet and I'm compiling into one video. So Ross Andrew Parker was a 17-year-old boy born on August 17th, 1984 in Peterborough in England. He was one of 2 children to Tony and Davina Parker, and he also had a girlfriend named Nicola. Ross loved football, he loved playing it, he loved watching it, and that was something that he shared with his dad as well. That was quite a big bonding point for them two. They supported the same team, they'd always watch the games together. He was halfway to getting a qualification in business studies, and when he turned 18 he wanted to become part of the police force. During his time at school, Ross actually earned himself the nickname Half Pint because of his size. He was only 5'5" at 17 years old, which is a little bit shorter than the average male, and so all his friends called him Half Pint. Ross worked part-time as a barman at a local pub called the Solstice, which is actually where he met his girlfriend Nicola. So in the early hours of Friday the 21st of September 2001, Ross and Nicola were both working at the pub. Both of their shifts ended at 1 AM that morning, and so they decided that they were both going to walk to Nicola's friend's house together because she was having a bit of a get-together. So the two of them set off walking just a little bit after 1, and at about 1:15 they were walking down a cycling path when they were confronted by about 10 men. Some of the men were wearing balaclavas, some of them had things in their hand, but it was dark so they couldn't really see what they were holding. And that was when one of the men told Ross that he better start running, but they all blocked his path from every angle so he couldn't. Then one of the men sprayed tear gas in Ross's face, making him unable to see, while another one punched him in the stomach. Another gang member stood behind Ross, then stabbed him with a foot-long hunting knife 3 times in the throat and in the chest. The knife was so large that it actually went all the way through Ross's body to the other side twice out of those 3 times. Ross obviously at this point had fallen to the floor, where a bunch of the gang members were kicking him while another one was hitting him over the head with a hammer. Meanwhile, Nicola had run off to get some help. There was a petrol station down the road, so she just sprinted straight there. There she borrowed a man's phone and called the police, and while she was on the phone to the 999 operator, she heard Ross scream out in pain twice. She then, by chance, saw a police car driving past, and so she flagged it down, got inside, and then asked him to drive to the location of the attack. It had been about 5 minutes in total since Nicola had actually left to go and get help, and by the time she'd got back, the gang had left and Ross had bled to death on the floor alone. And so the next morning police began a murder inquiry, but they knew it was going to be relatively hard to get any form of witnesses or any kind of information from the public. Since the attackers were in a large group, there was a possibility that it could be a gang or just a dangerous group of men. Well, they clearly were a very dangerous group. They'd already murdered one person, and so the chances of anyone bringing any information forward about them was very unlikely because people were scared of them. Members of their own gang aren't going to give themselves up, and members of the public that know who did it would be too scared to. And so members of the community kind of banded together, all put some money together and raised a £1,000 reward for anyone to come forward with any information that led to an arrest, just as kind of an incentive to get people to want to bring forward information. During the week following the attack, police received a lot of anonymous tips, which led to the arrest of 12 British Pakistani men. All 12 of these men, as they were being transported between police stations and things like that, they were taken in a police van, and they actually vandalised the whole inside of all of these police vans. And it was clear that all these men were connected in some way, whether they were part of a gang or what, because they all used to chant the same thing, even when they were by themselves. They used to chant Taliban, Osama bin Laden. They'd do it when they were together in the police vans, they would do it when they were alone in their holding cells, they would say it to police in their questionings. This just seemed like a very running thing along every single one of these men. And then 5 days after the murder, 4 of these men were charged. They were called Sarfraz Ali, Ahmed Awan, Shahid Nazir and Zairaf Marad. A year later, they all appeared in court where every single one of them pled not guilty to their part in Ross Parker's murder. Okay, so for a little bit about each of the suspected killers. So there was Ahmed, who was aged 22. He always used to refer to himself as a gangster and had what police call a fantasy for knives. Shahid, who was also aged 22, was actually married with a son, and he worked at a local takeaway with the 21-year-old Zairaf. Sarfraz Ali was aged 25 and he was also married. However, his wife left him before the trial began. I mean, possibly she knew more than the court knew at this point. Maybe she knew that he was guilty. So one of the main forms of evidence that was used in their trial were some audio recordings taken from these police vans that they were being transported in. All the men would talk about Ross's murder very openly, but in a different language, as if police didn't have translators. I don't know what language they were speaking in. It wasn't English, and they thought that they could get away with that, but police just brought in translators and they found out so much. Shahid was recorded saying that Ross's murder was like a bloodbath, and actually said that the third stab with that hunting knife actually split his neck right open. Ahmed and Zairaf were both heard speaking about their police statements and saying how they'd made them up and how gullible the police were. And because the men were held in police custody for a year before their trial, police actually had some evidence from one of the men's cellmates. Ahmed had told his cellmate on several occasions that he had a hatred of white people, and that they went out on that night looking for white blood to shed. And this murder of Ross Parker happened right in the aftermath of 9/11, like 10 days after the 9/11 attacks. And as a result of that, at the time in Peterborough, there seemed to have been a lot of stereotyping and hostility and racist remarks from the white people in that area to the Asian community. Not from Ross in particular, this was just a random murder. They just caught him at the wrong time. They went out looking for any white person to take this anger out on. Ahmed also told his cellmate his exact part in the murder, in the cleanup, in the preparation. When police had initially arrested all of these men, they'd searched all the houses, and they didn't find anything in anyone's home apart from Shahid's, where they found a lot. It seemed to have been like the men's headquarters. In a shed in his back garden, they found all of the murder weapons along with bin bags upon bin bags of clothes soaked with blood. Some of these clothes did belong to the 4 men that they had arrested, but there were also extra clothes, like extra tops and extra pants. And obviously these men weren't wearing 2 lots of every item of clothing, and so some of them must belong to other people. Shahid's DNA and fingerprints were found on that foot-long hunting knife, and even though these murder weapons had been washed, they hadn't been washed very well, and so traces of Ross's blood were found on both the knife and on the hammer. Ross's blood was also found on those clothes, and the injuries to his head were consistent with those that would have been made by that specific type of hammer. There was also blood found on a sock and the inside of a shoe in this shed. Obviously there were t-shirts that were soaked in blood and everything, but it's easy to get blood from another person on your t-shirt, but it's not easy to get it inside of your shoe. And so it's thought that whoever's sock and shoe this was had kicked Ross so many times with so much force, and Ross had bled so much that this blood had actually soaked through this person's shoe and through onto their sock. And just think how hard it would be to do that if someone was just bleeding from their head a bit. Ross must have been bleeding so much. 3 balaclavas were actually found inside Shahid's home, so not in the shed this time, and they also had blood on them which matched Ross. And Shahid's younger brother Wyatt actually gave evidence against him, saying that he saw his older brother on the night of the killing washing the murder weapons in their kitchen. He also saw the other 3 men at his home that night, also all covered in blood, just like his older brother Shahid was. Eventually, Ahmed, Shahid and Zairaf admitted to parts of the attack, but not to the murder. So they admitted to kicking Ross, they admitted to attempting to clean these weapons, but they said that they never used the weapons, and they also said that they sprayed him with the tear gas, but they never actually did the killing part. They said that the person that actually used the weapons on Ross was Sarfraz, even though police already knew and already used this as evidence that the hunting knife had Shahid's DNA and fingerprints on it. But Sarfraz completely denied any involvement in the attack at all. He said that he was at home that night sleeping. He wasn't even out with these guys. Although police had audio recordings from the police van of Sarfraz saying to his friends that this was going to be his story and telling them to all just go along with it. So on December 19th, 2002, Sarfraz Ali, Ahmed Arwan and Shahid Nazir were all sentenced to life in prison for the murder of Ross Parker. Ahmed got a minimum of 18 years, whereas Shahid and Sarfraz, who were the ones believed to have been using the weapons, the knife and the hammer, both got a minimum of 16. So actually, because they were sentenced in 2002, those 2 are eligible for release anytime now, so it's just up to parole officers. But Zairaf Marad was actually found completely not guilty of anything. Not guilty of murder, not even guilty of manslaughter, not even guilty of assault, because he was obviously there. Police knew that he was there that night, and he admitted to being a part of this, yet he got absolutely no prison time for anything. I just can't understand it at all, because he was one of the 3 men that admitted to having a part in the attack. Yes, he said he didn't murder him, but he said that he tried to clean the murder weapons, he said he kicked him, and so for him to not even get any time for at least assault, at the very least, I can't understand what was going on there. Like I said, the men's reasoning for the murder and for this attack was because of how the Asian community was being treated in the aftermath of 9/11. They wanted to get back at white people for being so horrible to them and being so stereotyping and hostile towards the Asian community, which a lot of white people at the time were. I mean, I was only like 2 or 3 years old when 9/11 happened, so I don't remember any of it firsthand, but I know that a lot of white people in England and in America and all over the world just were very hostile towards the Asian community. They just, for some reason, could not separate that these people were not responsible for a group of terrorists. And there were a lot of white people at the time being just awful to the Asian community because they couldn't separate that. They were attacking them verbally and physically, and obviously these boys felt like they had to get revenge. But as I'm sure you can imagine, a racially motivated murder just caused even more hostility in that area. The area where Ross was actually killed on that cycling path was repeatedly vandalised and spray painted with a bunch of threats towards white people, saying things like no-go area for whites and death to all whites. At several schools all over England, so not even just in the Peterborough area, there were several racially motivated fights, and the people in these fights would chant things such as death to all whites and the same chants that the men would say about Osama bin Laden. But yeah, that's it for this case. I know it was a very short one again, and I'm sorry for that. But like I said, tomorrow's video is going to be like 50 minutes long, I hope. And if you did catch my Yorkshire Ripper video last time before it was taken down, you can still watch this one because it's going to be completely remade and everything. Everything's going to be said differently, like it's going to be a completely different video. So yeah, thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a thumbs up and subscribe down below if you are new, because I make videos like this all the time. And yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!